what about we jump into the earnings? Because, you know, at the end of the day, I keep on saying that every 2 weeks is what matters are the earnings. So I love Refinitiv. So Refinitiv will send you, if you're on their watch list, mailing list, sorry, every week, these earnings expectations. So here we are mostly looking at how the Q4 2021 earnings were versus expectations. So I'm talking about the S&P 500 here, 76% were above expectation, okay, and 20% reported below expectations. So in a typical quarter, according to Refinitiv, 66% of the companies will be beating expectation, the estimates, and 20% will miss estimates. So what has been happening from the last quarter, and we know it already, and or you should know it if you've been watching those webinars on YouTube before, is, you know, the last 4 to 5 quarters earnings have been better versus history in the for US companies. So over the 4 quarters, the previous one, 84% of the companies were beating estimates, and only 13% were missing estimates. So even if we are above the average, the historical average, it is a bit coming down versus the previous year a bit. So the trend, and that's the same for the revenue versus expectations, where here we get 76% above and 23% below. To compare, 62% will be on average and 38% below on average. And over the last 4 quarters, we are talking 79% here and 21% here. Oops. So trend is a bit lower. So there is really a question mark is what is going to happen in the next 2 quarters in terms of earnings growth and sales growth. So here we are talking about the expectations for the S&P for Q1 2022, looking at the earnings. So that would be for last year, and the expectation, so we should be putting expectations here. We go from $408 to $435, which is a growth of 6.5%. So, but what is really interesting, and that goes back to the sectors analysis that we've done before. If you put aside the energy sector, okay, so this one, yep, so which you get a $20 difference. If you put aside this $20 difference, you only grow up by $6, okay, or $7, okay. So here you get $20 delta, whereas here you get really 26.5, okay. So the delta X energy is around $6. In other words, if you put energy aside, expectations in terms of earnings growth are only for 1.3% or 1.51% growth for the earnings. So there is not much to expect from the market X, or for should I say not the market, for the companies X X oil, X energy. Here I'm taking some data from Bloomberg. So that's the year on year where we get the growth as well. So that's the earnings per share. So that's the actual for next year and the year after, where we go from 194 to 227 for this year, and then 246. So 8%, 10%. Market is still expecting for the S&P 500 roughly between 7-10% earnings growth for the next 2 years. So on one hand, you can argue that because the energy sector and some other sectors came from having no earnings in 2020 to low earnings in 2021, that suddenly those earnings could come up, and actually, you know, most of this growth is going to come from those sectors, but that is still quite an aggressive expectations if we consider that there is a chance that the world is going to be slowing massively. So if you look at something that we mentioned before, that was last week, but the potential US recession, you know, some indicators are giving us, you know, 50% chance that, you know, the US economy could go into recession. can we have a 7 to 10% earnings growth, which is very similar to the average growth of the S&P? That sounds a bit tricky. So is it a question of, earnings expectation will have to come down in the near future? So here I'm just taking the earnings for the quarter on quarter. So this is for the estimate here. Then Q plus 1, Q plus 2, so 3%, 7%, 5%. So if we got 3, 7, and 5, that is still far from the 7, 10% that you have for the year, even if that is true that most of the earnings growth is coming and is tilted to the end of the year. Still, expectations could be coming down. And why I'm saying that is I want to link this conversation with what we discussed 10 minutes ago, which was about the Nike price action. So Nike came with their earnings, stock in the morning, opened nicely, then started to come down because what they said is the expectation was not like very good. The report was okay, but the expectations, the outlook was not great. So as we are coming into next month and the start of the Q1 earnings season, really there is a question of how these earnings is gonna play out. So far, most of the time the market gets saved by good earnings. And really here there's a good and a big question mark.